morning, everyone, from New York City. It's just about 10 a.m. on the East Coast. It's 7 a.m. out west. I'm Anne Marie Green in Studio 57. Here's a look at the stories grabbing our attention right now. Nationwide anti-government strike. Thousands of Israelis take to the streets in Tel Aviv, demanding a ceasefire with Hamas after the bodies of 6 hostages were found in Gaza. President Biden is now saying Israel's prime minister is not doing enough to secure a deal. A Labor Day battleground state blitz. VP Harris joins President Biden in Pittsburgh for the first joint campaign event since she became the nominee. More than 10,000 hotel workers walk off the job in cities across the U.S. We're going to dig into their demands, which include higher pay and an end to pandemic-era job cuts. Plus, millions of DirecTV customers are missing out on some really big sporting events later on. We are going to tell you why networks and channels went dark last night and how long it may last. And another tennis upset. Coco Gauff's reign at the U.S. Open champion, it ends as she finishes with 19 double faults in her match against fellow American Emma Navarro. There are major disruptions underway in Israel this morning. Demonstrators are pressuring Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government, calling on officials to reach a deal to release the hostages held by Hamas. Late last night, thousands of Israelis took to the streets to express their grief and their anger after 6 hostages were found dead in Gaza. Israel says they were murdered by Hamas. The group of hostages includes Hersh Goldberg, Poland, and Israeli American. These are pictures coming from Israel, or rather from Jerusalem, where his funeral is taking place this morning. And amid rising tensions in the region, an oil tanker and merchant vessel reportedly came under attack in the Red Sea this morning. No casualties have been reported in either incident. Our MTS Taib is following the latest from Tel Aviv. MTS, good morning.
Well, this burst of mass protests and now national strike happened almost spontaneously following the announcement the bodies of the 6 hostages, including American Hersh Goldberg, Poland, were recovered from a tunnel in Gaza. And it really just underscores the pressure that has been building for months now over Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his extreme right-wing government coalition's seeming unwillingness to reach a ceasefire and hostage release deal with Hamas that the U.S. is helping to broker. Now, many protesters accuse Netanyahu of repeatedly stalling the talks for his own political gain and hope this giant wave of public anger, which has effectively halted Israel's economy, could signal a new level of pressure on him to finally agree to a deal. But until an agreement is reached, the violence in Gaza rages on, even as the UN attempts to vaccinate 640,000 Palestinian children to prevent a major outbreak of polio. Now, President Biden has spoken to the Goldberg Poland family, telling them Hamas leaders will, quote, pay for their son's killings, but he also told reporters he was still optimistic a deal could be reached, as he and Vice President Kamala Harris are scheduled to meet with the team representing the U.S. in the hostage deal negotiations at the White House Situation Room later today. Anne-Marie.
MTS, thank you. It's about to be a very busy Labor Day for Democrats who are courting union voters in battleground states. Vice President Kamala Harris will join President Biden in Pittsburgh, their first joint campaign event since he stepped aside and she became the nominee. Former President Donald Trump, meantime, and his running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, don't have any events today, but Trump returns to Pennsylvania on Wednesday. CBS News campaign reporter Aaron Navarro is joining us now with more on the Harris team's movements. Good to see you, Aaron. The Harris-Walz campaign is doing a Labor Day blitz with some help from President Biden. We know that the union vote is typically a dependable vote for Democrats, but Republicans have been putting effort into chipping away at that. How important is the union vote, especially in these 2 states?
Good morning, Anne-Marie. There are just under 600,000 labor union members in Michigan, about 800,000 here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and in what is expected to be a very close race, maybe even closer than 2020. Both campaigns know every vote counts. And that's why you're seeing the Harris campaign do a full-on blitz, as you mentioned. The vice president's going to Detroit and then Pittsburgh, where I am, later this afternoon. Governor Tim Walz is speaking at Labor Fest in Milwaukee. The second gentleman will be at an event in Newport News, West Virginia state Democrats are looking to keep not that competitive this November. But they know that the working class type of voter, that archetype, is something that has historically been at least curious about former President Trump. Labor union members and leaders are going to be watching very closely to see where the rank and file members lie and if they shift in a meaningful way towards Republicans.
Great point. I want to talk to you a little bit about some polling. The polling shows that the race remains definitely still in a dead heat. There's one big survey out Sunday that suggested Harris got no notable convention polling bounce, which I don't think is a complete surprise because, you know, once she shifted to the top of the ticket, there was this groundswell of enthusiasm, which, you know, one could say that would have been what happened after perhaps the DNC. Instead, she got it before. But Trump is also a little bit ahead in some key issues when we're talking about economy, you know, the inflation, border security. How is the Harris campaign kind of working to close the gap on some of these key issues?
Well, the Harris campaign stance is that they are still the underdogs in this race. They know they obviously saw a lot of momentum going into that convention, but the worry and the question on most of the Democratic faithfuls' minds that when I was talking to them in Chicago is how do we keep this going? And in part, they see an opening to define Harris. They don't think that she is well known at least, as former President Trump in most voters' eyes. That's why they have $370 million reserved in ads from now until November. And that's why they're expecting to see lots of travel for her in the coming months as they try to cut into some of the margins, especially when it comes to the economy. They're going to tout her economic plan and what she has proposed to cut down taxes for middle-class voters, as well as grocery prices. But it's going to be a task that they need to fulfill the next 2 months if they want to win this election.
So we're just 8 days away from the first presidential debate between Harris and Trump. You know, typically a candidate would scale back their travels because they would start to prep for debate. Harris really doesn't have that option. She's got to do both simultaneously. What do we know about how she's preparing?
It's a truncated schedule. We know that she's going to be obviously traveling today. She's going to New Hampshire on Wednesday. The rest of the week is not yet known. We know that there is still a debate over debates. The microphone issue and whether that will remain on, I'm told, is still being negotiated with ABC, the network hosting that debate. Trump's team is okay with it being muted, saying it's the same rules as the CNN one. Harris over the weekend kind of goaded Trump and saying that she believes his handlers don't want the mic to be on because they're afraid of what he might say. So we'll see how that gets resolved in the next coming 8 days. You're right, until the debate.
All right, Aaron, thank you. All right, let's get to the latest on the Trump campaign now. CBS News campaign reporter Libby Cathay is joining us now with a little bit more. Libby, good to see you. So, you know, we're just talking to Aaron right before you, and he talked about the fact that the working class has certainly, the blue-collar working class has shown some curiosity about the Trump campaign. Both Harris and Trump are working to capture the union vote. For Harris, it's about maintaining it. For Trump, it's about chipping away at some of those often reliable Democratic voters. But they're not out today. They're not out today on Labor Day. What can we expect in the coming days?
Yeah, good morning, Anne-Marie, and happy Labor Day to you. So while the Trump campaign is not out today, they are getting out the rest of the week, and there are surrogates fanning out battleground states. The former president himself, though, will be in Pennsylvania on Wednesday, all-important state, before Thursday going to New York to give a speech about the economy. Friday, he'll be in North Carolina, another battleground, speaking to the Fraternal Order of Police, a big police union. And then on Saturday, he has a rally in Wisconsin. So today they may not be out, but the rest of the week, we will see the former president on the campaign trail, which now that is the unofficial kickoff to the home stretch of the campaign cycle, Anne-Marie.
Yeah, you can definitely, it is the home stretch. So polling shows that Trump has been losing some ground to Harris as we are sort of, as you say, the home stretch. You could call it the fourth quarter of the race. Senior campaign official for Donald Trump, Corey Lewandowski, spoke about this over the weekend. I want to play some sound.
When you put the two campaigns side by side, there is no question that Donald Trump is outworking, out talking about policy, and outmaneuvering the Biden-Harris Walls machine.
Okay, so I expect him to say that. He's being paid by the campaign. But have we seen the campaign shift strategies at all in the wake of, you know, kind of losing here or like drifting back, I guess, a little bit here and there in some of the polling?
Absolutely. In the last couple of weeks, the former president has gotten out more than he had in the summer when President Biden was the nominee. Now that Kamala Harris is barnstorming all these states, as Aaron mentioned, the former president's campaign is also getting out there, getting out into battleground states. Of course, Corey Lewandowski, you just heard that clip. That is what he's going to say. The Harris campaign would say they're doing the same thing, that they're the ones out there more, that they're the ones talking policy more. But the fact of the matter is both campaigns know that this election is going to come down to voters in battleground states, and it is a tight race. So they'll keep watching that polling, but they know that it's really anyone's game right now, Anne-Marie.
Okay, so as we mentioned earlier, 8 days away till the debate. What do we know about Trump's preps? Notoriously, he doesn't like to prep traditionally.
Exactly. So the former president says he doesn't do the role playing at the podium like other people do. He says he's a great debater naturally. But right now, Tulsi Gabbard, the former congresswoman from Hawaii, who was a presidential candidate herself in 2020, who debated on stage with Kamala Harris, is helping the former president with his debate prep. And we know from what she said yesterday in an interview that they're going to be painting Kamala Harris as a flip-flopper. They're going to show that she's moving back from her policy stances that she said when she was a candidate for the Democratic nomination in 2020. Now she's changing that a little bit. And so they're going to paint her as a hypocrite. And I'm sure Kamala Harris's campaign plans to do the same. But you're right. Pretty much 1 week to the campaign. We will see, Anne-Marie.
Yeah, we'll see. Libby, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, a record number of Americans are traveling this Labor Day weekend. We say it all the time. The TSA predicts that it will have screened more than 17 million people between August 29th and September 4th. Gas, plane ticket, and accommodation prices are down overall by 2% from last year. That's good news. But as people start to make their way home today, parts of the country are experiencing weather disturbances, which could impact travel plans. CBS News national correspondent Errol Barnett is at New York's LaGuardia Airport for more on how travelers are coping. I got to say, it doesn't look that bad, but I know sometimes the huge rush is often early in the morning. Errol, what are you seeing today? And has the weather caused any flight delays or anything like that?
Anne-Marie, great to see you as we kick off another week. I can tell you from my first-person perspective here at LaGuardia, and the gate behind me serves American Airlines, JetBlue, Southwest, that the early indications are travel is smooth here this morning. The folks around me seem relatively cool, calm, and collected. We saw some women coming back from North Carolina where they say their travel was smooth, other than some poor weather there in the mid-Atlantic. And that's an encouraging sign. But if we take a look at the national picture right now, roughly 10% of flights across the country are experiencing some type of delay or cancellation. We can look at something that FlightAware, which is a website that consolidates all the airlines' data, puts together, and it shows that around the New York City area, so if you talk about LaGuardia, Newark, JFK, and other airports, there really aren't that many delays and even fewer cancellations. But when you look at this map, you can see how there are weather systems marching across the country, around Texas, some of the southern states, the Midwest, and that's all heading east. And when there is a large delay, it can cause a domino effect. We're not seeing that yet, so that's encouraging. You mentioned some of the record-setting numbers. This summer, the TSA has screened more than 200, what do they say, 240 million people, and that's since May. And of their 10 highest traffic days when it comes to airline travel, it's all, most of them have happened since May as well. So we have seen now a return to air travel. Folks are hitting the road as well and seeing gas that's cheaper than it was last year. So all of the early indications are positive, and we hope that continues as people continue to trickle home over the next couple days.
I mean, do we know what's behind this uptick in summer travel? I mean, a 2% kind of discount over last year is nice, but it's not huge. So there must be like something else that's driving people to hit the road and the skies.
That's a great question, Anne-Marie. You know, if I think back to the pandemic when I was covering the transportation beat and you and I were chatting from airports all the time, in 2021 and 2022, we definitely saw a dip in air travel because of health and safety reasons, because of staffing issues at airports and air traffic control centers. Now here we are in the summer of 2024, and it seems as if people have first of all, felt comfortable traveling. Second of all, airlines have beefed up and prepared for that domino effect I referred to earlier. United Airlines, for example, added an additional 1,500 flights, they tell us, across this Memorial Day weekend in case there were any hiccups. And of course, the price of travel isn't as restrictive as it was for many people during the pandemic who are experiencing their own financial constraints. And so in a strange way, here in the summer of 2024, we're finally seeing people return to their normal travel behavior. LaGuardia. In fact, AAA was saying, I believe it was AAA, that there are more people choosing to travel domestically than internationally because some of the costs. So, you know, we've all experienced those cool places in driving distance from our homes. The pandemic has pushed us all out to find enjoyable places to go. And it seems as though folks are really taking to that here on this last long weekend of the summer.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think, you know, a lot of the national parks saw an uptick as we kind of like looked around our own backyard and realized there's plenty to see here. Give me 3 tips if you're traveling today, because I know it could be frustrating for people.
Absolutely, and these tips are relevant anytime you travel. Number 1, if you can book a flight, book them early. Get to the airport as early as possible, because those are the ones least susceptible to cancellations and that domino effect I referenced. Always pack light. You only need a carry-on bag, Anne-Marie. It will make your weekend trip and your weekend getaway much more enjoyable. And my top tip for travelers all the time, no matter where you go, is pack your patience and be as full of gratitude and appreciation as possible when you travel. I promise you, if you put that energy out here at the airport, in the TSA line, on the plane, no matter who you're seated next to, you will get it back in some way, shape, or form.
Oh, I love that. Bring in the crystals and the good vibes. I'm into the Zen. I'm into the Zen. And I want to know how you pack a carry-on.
Yes.
I need to see like a TikTok or Instagram or something, Errol, because I know you're a good traveler. Errol Barnett, thank you.
You got it.
All right, here's what else we're tracking to keep you in the know. At least 7 people are dead after a bus crashed in Mississippi, and dozens more are hurt. The bus was traveling from Atlanta to Dallas. According to the Mexican foreign minister, all of the people who died were Mexican, including a 6-year-old boy. The NTSB and the Mississippi Highway Patrol say the vehicle likely experienced tire failure, causing it to run off the road and then unfortunately overturn. Nearly 500 crew members are working to contain the Fish Creek fire in Wyoming. Huge columns of black smoke can be seen all over the state. As of yesterday, the fire had burned nearly 13,000 acres. Officials say lightning sparked it last month. In Germany, a far-right party has won a regional election for the first time since the Nazis lost power. The controversial AfD party got about 1/3 of the vote in one of Germany's eastern states. That's more than any other party. And the AfD is known for being anti-immigrant and opposing the country's support for Ukraine. Its leader has been convinced in the past, or rather convicted in the past, of knowingly using Nazi rhetoric, which is illegal in Germany. A so-called spy whale has been found dead in Norway. The body of the animal, nicknamed Valdemir, was found over the weekend. The beluga whale was first spotted in Norwegian waters 5 years ago. It had a GoPro camera attached to a harness that read "Equipment of St. Petersburg." Well, that sparked rumors the mammal could be a spy whale, something experts say has happened in the past. Moscow never responded to those allegations, though. San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Ricky Pearsall was shot during an attempted robbery. An update on his condition and what we're hearing about the gunman. So stay with us. Loud explosions rocked Ukraine's capital of Kyiv this morning as Russia launched a new round of drones and missiles. Officials say falling debris from the downed weapons injured at least 2 people. The attack sparked fires, damaging homes and infrastructure. Ukraine says it destroyed more than 20 of the missiles. Overnight Sunday, Ukraine carried out one of its biggest drone attacks on Russia, targeting refineries and power stations in Moscow. Russia downplayed the attack, saying that it downed more than 150 Ukrainian drones. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams is following all of these developments from our London bureau. So it's sort of a continuation of this tit for tat. Holly, what's the latest on these attacks?
Good morning, Anne-Marie. Well, Ukraine says that attack from Russia overnight and then into this morning included 35 missiles and more than 20 drones, some targeting the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. Ukraine's foreign minister said on social media this morning that some of the ballistic missiles fired by Russia were supplied to Russia by North Korea. Ukraine says that it succeeded in intercepting many of the missiles and drones, but there are multiple reports of injuries and fires. And the attack actually coincided with the start of the school year for many Ukrainian children. Meanwhile, Russia says that it intercepted 158 Ukrainian drones overnight from Saturday to Sunday, including some over the Moscow region. That's a long way from Ukraine's borders. I think the last few days really reinforced the fact that drone warfare has played such a critical part in this conflict. When I've reported from Ukraine, we've heard that not just from soldiers near the front line, but from those people who are furiously trying to manufacture drones and gain a technological advantage.
Fascinating. So now we are hearing from Russia that they say that they've gone further into eastern Ukraine. The feeling was when Ukraine started to push into Russia that Russia would be forced to remove some of its troops from eastern Ukraine and maybe lose that front there. But it doesn't seem to be working out that way.
Right. So when Ukraine launched its incursion into southern Russia last month, the biggest foreign incursion into Russia since World War II, the Ukrainians were clearly hoping that it would force Russia to divert a lot of resources and manpower away from eastern Ukraine and to go back and defend their own homeland. Remember that more than 2 years into this war, Russia controls about 20% of Ukraine's territory. Now, that Ukrainian assault in Russia is clearly a humiliation for Russia's President Vladimir Putin. In fact, just this morning, Ukraine's leader Volodymyr Zelensky said that his forces had captured more than 600 Russian troops as part of that assault. It also potentially gives Ukraine more leverage in any future negotiations that take place, but it does not seem to have slowed Russia's advance around the city of Pokrovsk in eastern Ukraine. Now, Pokrovsk is strategically important as a logistic and transport hub. The Ukrainians are desperately trying to hold on to it, but President Putin claimed today that his forces are advancing faster in that area than they have in a long time. Now, by all reports, Russia is taking huge losses in the process, but nonetheless, they are advancing.
All right, Holly, thank you very much. Well, the San Francisco 49ers player is out of the hospital and recovering less than 48 hours after he was shot during an attempted robbery. Police say rookie wide receiver Ricky Pearsall was held up in broad daylight on Saturday. Officers quickly arrested a 17-year-old suspect. His name has not been released because of his age. Elise Preston has more on the investigation.
Just hours after receiving a warm welcome from Niner Nation at a fan event, 49ers rookie Ricky Pearsall was seen limping to an ambulance, bleeding from a gunshot wound to the chest.
He was walking alone when a suspect approached him and attempted to commit an armed robbery using a gun.
Police say a struggle over the gun broke out. Multiple shots were fired, injuring both. It happened in San Francisco's famous upscale shopping district of Union Square. One witness spotted Pearsall just before hearing the shooting.
I heard maybe 4 or 5 shots.
Pearsall's mother, Erin, posted on Facebook that the bullet entered Pearsall's chest and exited his back without hitting any vital organs, as first reported by TheAthletic.com. Pearsall was released from the hospital Sunday afternoon. In a statement, he and his team thanked police and medical staff.
We are 49ers!
Pearsall was the 49ers' first-round pick in April's NFL draft. Authorities say it appears Pearsall was not specifically targeted and that the 17-year-old suspect acted alone.
Nah, he ain't no juvenile.
Stars of the NFL world reacted to the shooting, including unconfirmed reports that the suspect wanted Pearsall's watch.
For anybody out there that has nice items, nothing is worth your life.
I mean, anytime there's gun violence, which tragically exists all around this country, it's a problem for any city.
Elise Preston.
Here's a look at what's on deck this morning. After the break, we'll explain the catalyst for a massive hotel workers' strike in cities across the U.S., what they're demanding, and how it could affect the travel industry. And the Federal Reserve is likely to cut interest rates later this month. We're going to look into how that decision could impact your wallet. And the competition continues in Paris. Later on this hour, we'll have an update on the Paralympics and the archers that are getting a lot of attention at the Games. Stay with us. Hotel workers in cities across the country have walked off the job after the break. A look at why they are striking and how it could affect your accommodations. Stay with us. Welcome back to CBS News. Here's a quick look at some of the big stories that we are following for you this morning. Pope Francis heads to Indonesia today for the first leg of his 4-nation tour of Asia. He's going to cover some 20,000 miles during his 12-day trip. The pontiff is set to arrive in Jakarta tomorrow, where he'll participate in an interfaith meeting at the largest mosque in Southeast Asia. He will also make stops in Papua New Guinea, East Timor, and Singapore. Hundreds of people in Los Angeles County are having power cut off to their homes indefinitely. The utility company servicing the area, SoCal Edison, says the decision was made due to landslide danger. People who live in Rancho Palos Verdes have been told that they need to prepare to evacuate because of the ongoing landslide causing the ground to shift. Boeing's contract with its workers who assemble planes in Washington state is set to expire in 10 days. If an agreement is not reached before then, thousands of workers are set to go on strike for the first time in 16 years. Both the union and Boeing say that they want to avoid a strike. Negotiations are ongoing. Thousands of hotel employees, meantime, are on strike around the country today. The walkout began yesterday, and it's expected to last at least another day. It's directly impacting 24 hotel properties around the country operated by Hilton, Hyatt, Marriott, and Fairmont. Lauren Kaori-Gurley is a labor reporter at the Washington Post covering the story for us. Lauren, thanks for joining us. First off, who's striking and why?
Good morning, Anne-Marie. Happy Labor Day. There are about 10,000 workers in 8 cities striking at Marriott, Hilton, and Hyatt. That goes from the East Coast cities like Boston to West Coast, California, San Francisco, San Jose, San Diego, all the way to Hawaii. And so they belong to the powerful Hospitality Workers Union Unite Here, which says that workers are striking for higher pay, increased staffing, and reduced workloads. The union has accused the hotels of using COVID-era lockdowns as a pretext to permanently cut costs.
You know, I got to tell you, I was on vacation not too long ago, and I did notice that not only were my towels not changed, which is something that's happening more and more, but the room wasn't cleaned. And now I'm realizing that that probably was part of these COVID-era changes that just, I guess, never went away. And does that mean reduced staffing at a lot of these hotels?
Yeah, exactly. So I spoke to a striking worker in San Diego, for example, Christian Carbajal, who said that, they shut down room service in his hotel, which means that he's now working sort of as a grab and go attendant at the market at the front of the restaurant. That means he says $800 less in his pocket every month because he's lost most of his tips. So there's all sorts of services that have been suspended or reduced in hotels, major hotel brands around the country.
Could we see this strike expand?
Certainly. So it's expected to expand today even. The union has not said where yet, but there are a number of other cities that have authorized strikes. We could also see more hotels going out on strike in cities that are already on strike.
And then, okay, so what if you're traveling? A lot of people are on vacation. Either they started before Labor Day or they're extending it past Labor Day. Any tips for travelers? How should they deal with these strikes? What do they need to know?
Sure. So I would expect that most of the hotels that are on strike many of the hotels will have limited service. You'll have managers picking up the slack. Daily housekeeping and services like pool and spa and restaurants may be very short-staffed. And the union, Unite Here, is actually asking guests who are scheduled to stay at these hotels to cancel their stays immediately in solidarity with those workers. And they're asking them to also demand a full refund without a cancellation fee.
And then what are we hearing from the hotel operators?
Sure. So I've gotten comment from Hilton and Hyatt. Both say that they've been willing to negotiate. They are willing to still negotiate for a fair deal for their workers. We did not receive a response from Marriott.
All right, Lauren Kaori-Gurley, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Disney-owned channels like ABC and ESPN were pulled off DirecTV yesterday as part of a distribution standoff between the two companies. More than 11 million subscribers were cut off in the middle of the fourth round of the U.S. Open. The blackout is likely to continue until a new contract is reached, which is bad news for NFL fans waiting for the season to kick off later on this week. In China, a new survey finds modest manufacturing growth despite growing economic concern inside the country. The bump can likely be attributed to export orders because consumption is still weakening inside China. Internal manufacturing activity is at a 6-month low and only worsened by rising geopolitical concerns. And we're just about a couple weeks away from an expected rate cut by the Federal Reserve. The central bank has kept rates higher in an effort to tamp down inflation, but it hasn't raised or lowered them since July of last year. Current borrowing costs are at levels not seen since before 2007 to 2008, which is during the financial crisis. So CBS News contributor Javier David is here with me now in Studio 57 to break it on down. He's tapping away at his computer, getting all the numbers up. So thanks for joining us. Sure. Listen, you know, what's been happening over the past several weeks is all these numbers are getting adjusted, right? And I feel like I'm just swinging from one end to the other. Oh, it was good news, but now it's bad news, and it's changing again. But now I feel like really positive about this. This month we are likely to see a 25 basis point cut on the interest rate, federal interest rate. What's that going to mean for everyday Americans?
So we're finally getting what we've been hoping, wishing, praying for the better part of the last 2 years. Yeah. Lower rates. That's good news for anyone that has a credit card, anyone that has an auto loan, anyone that is hoping, wishing, and praying to maybe get a mortgage at some point. Right. This is, you know, and that's the big thing here because that's really what's happening. And a big part of that is because people are staying in rentals longer because they just can't buy a house. They can't afford it. Yes. Yeah. And I was thinking to myself, that's going to, I suppose when it comes to all these changes, it's the people looking for houses that are going to see the most immediate impact because that interest rate can change. You know, and credit cards too, like and yeah, because APRs are really high. As much as we talk about as high as mortgage rates are, credit card APRs are in the double digits. These are at like near record highs, if not record highs, and so some of that will start to ease, and you'll see a little bit of relief in your statements. Not a whole lot if you're carrying balances. And again, I always say the best thing that you can do for yourself is pay off on a monthly because if you're carrying balances, you're going to be paying. I'm glad you said that because I was going to say that's what experts say, pay off those credit cards first. Any reference or comparison to 2007 is going to have most people on edge. How does today differ compared to what happened back in the 2000s? So the interesting thing, there's a counterintuitive fear that's been percolating in the minds of investors, Wall Street, that rate cuts may actually lead to a recession. So there's this data from Reiholtz Wealth Management that shows that since 1970, this is a really interesting statistic, and I wish I could pull the graphic up, but Fed easings have led to recessions or seen recessions happen within 12 months about 10 times since 1970. And that's narrowly divided between rate cuts that happened but didn't cause recessions about 6 times. So there's this whole fear about, okay, we've been debating this a very long time. Did the Fed keep rates too high for too long? And now, as they start to ease, they're going to give us some nominal 25%. Maybe we'll get a 50 basis point cut. But the whole idea being, because they held higher for longer, the economy adjusted, but now it's in a much rougher place if had they cut earlier. So the whole question is, will the Fed's actions, they've been scrambling to avoid a recession or a hard landing of sorts. Right. Now there's a whole, debate about whether or not these rate cuts are coming at a time that's kind of too little, too late. Right. If you've been living under sort of this weight of this inflation, you're not in the same financial position that you would have been in before. So even if the jobs market is in a very different place now. Right. It's been very, very tight. Now it's much looser. There are a lot more layoffs. Still, to put it in the context, the unemployment rate still low by historical standards, but it's not the go-go market that we saw 2021 through 2023. That's interesting. Well, let's hope it's not that. And it operates the way we were hoping. Listen, before I let you go, I got to ask you about this DirecTV, Disney, Rift. My dad is a huge U.S. Open fan, and I know if there was a blackout, I would be hearing about it nonstop. So I can't imagine how disappointed fans are. What's the deal? What's going on? What are the financial ramifications? 2 multi-billion-dollar companies are fighting over money. And I wish I could say it better than that, but that's what it is. Look, the background here is these fights happen a lot. And it's fairly common, but like it's a huge inconvenience to people like your dad and me, who's in fact a DirecTV subscriber. It's days before the NFL kickoff. I'm not happy.
Wow.
So there's a whole thing here, but to keep in mind, like, look, the era of streaming has made it really expensive for cable companies to like keep customers from cutting cords. So people see their bill, they complain, why am I paying so much? I'm gonna cancel. This makes it really hard for them to justify giving some sort of incentives just to keep customers holding on. Disney is a big player in the market, biggest name in showbiz, huge marketing power, and when they're backed up against the wall, they play hardball like they do here.
Yeah, and we already know that Disney has had sort of a rough few years itself with its own streaming platform and all that sort of stuff. So it's tough for media companies across the board. Javier David, thank you very much.
Yep.
The CDC is stepping in to make sure parents add vaccinations to their child's list of back-to-school preps. We're going to have details after the break. Cities across America have their annual Labor Day traditions, like in beautiful Ocean City, New Jersey. Runners hit the beach at 9 a.m. for a 5-mile or 1-mile run. And that is where we find CBS News Philadelphia's Kim Hudson. That's where you want to be, down the shore, Kim. If you got to work, that's how you want to do it. What's the scene like there? How many runners came out this morning?
That's all I'm saying. Well, we're talking about at least 200 have registered, about 130 pre-registered, several more registered this morning. But we're getting some amazing stories coming into the finish line. There was a man named Bill. He was 82 years old. He just came in from the 1-mile race. But we're going to interview Anita Schaefer real quick. Your dad is remarkable. What's your dad's first name and how old is he?
His name is Herb. He's 86 years old.
And he's running the 5-mile race, right?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Now, you said that he runs a lot of these races in the area all the time. What does it mean to you that he's celebrating Labor Day doing this?
Well, I'm so proud of him. Like, what resilience and what determination to, be committed to this running all these years. We're so proud of him.
Well, I am too, and I haven't even met the man. He hasn't even finished yet. Anita, thank you so much.
He'll be in. We're watching for him.
We're watching for him. She said he may be last, but he's going to finish, and that's what matters. I also want to show you the real heroes of this race. All these volunteers and the staff here. We have lots of water, lots of Gatorade right here. We also have snacks. We have bananas standing by. But this isn't the only place, okay? We're talking about 5 miles that way. And we have some runners still coming in from the 5-miler. But there are snacks and water stations all throughout Ocean City right now to make sure that these runners and these walkers stay healthy. Something else that's been coming out of here is all the little kids who have been running the 5-milers and the 1-milers too. We saw really small kids who looked like they were like 5 or 6 years old, and they finished that 1-mile race. So we're talking about a family-friendly event, a really great way to say goodbye to summer. But another thing, people are getting into that calorie deficit before they go to pig out. So work out before you pig out.
I like that. See, I always get it wrong. I eat first, and then I never want to run. And I just want to point out that they're running on the sand.
That's right.
That is so much harder than running on the boardwalk or running on the road.
Absolutely. Yeah. There are some people who ran the 1-mile run, and they did run barefoot, which is smart because then they don't have to contend with the sand in their shoes. But you're absolutely right. I mean, walking up here just takes it out of you. I can't imagine running 5 miles, but, these runners, they gave me some inspiration. We'll see what happens.
Me too. Kim Hudson, thank you very much. All right, for those flying home after the Labor Day holiday, stormy weather in the south could lead to further airport delays. Yesterday, hundreds of flights were delayed into and out of Dallas, Charlotte, and Miami. So for more on how today's storms could impact your trip home, let's bring in meteorologist Kelly Cass from our partners at the Weather Channel. Kelly, good morning.
Emery, good morning. It's looking amazing for the Northeast on this Labor Day holiday back into the Great Lakes region. Temperatures have cooled down. The air is nice and dry, and we'll see plenty of sunshine from Chicago to New York City. Across the Southeast and down into Texas, though, this is where we could have some problems on the roads. Thick fog in the morning and then showers and storms in the afternoon. We got the Carolina coast down to the Florida beaches and especially into Texas, where we could see some flooding rain, even where we need it in the western part of the state. Down down toward the Gulf Coast. We have a very humid atmosphere, and therefore more showers and storms will be popping up over the next couple of days. So that rain is going to add up in the gauges, 2 to 3 inches, but especially in West Texas, 3 to 5 inches. That could lead to some problems. Meanwhile, the tropics are waking up in the Atlantic Basin. We've got a few systems to watch. One close to home in the Gulf, which has a low chance of developing, but we're closely watching one in the Caribbean. As it moves over the warm water here in the Caribbean Sea, it will have an opportunity to develop, and we'll be watching it as it heads closer to the Yucatan Peninsula. And for more in-depth coverage, you can watch the Weather Channel on cable or live on your favorite TV streaming devices. Anne-Marie, back to you.
All right, Kelly, thank you. Well, as children return to school, there is growing concern over the lack of vaccinations being used against preventable diseases. In some cases, access is the problem, but misinformation and mistrust are also stopping some parents from getting their children shots. So now the CDC is stepping in with a plan to boost those numbers. CBS News medical contributor Dr. Celine Gounder reports.
No tears from Fort Worth, Texas kindergartner Emily Soria getting her required vaccines with her dad and little brother.
She was behind on her vaccination schedule by 1 year, so we had to get all taken care of.
They were able to catch up on their vaccines because the Tarrant County Health Department brought this free clinic to a high school gym in their neighborhood.
It was a lot cheaper than going into the doctor's office and getting it done that way.
Health workers here gave out more than 2,600 doses to nearly 1,000 people.
The reason it's working so well is because they feel comfortable coming here. It's a school that they know, and it's a place that is familiar to them.
But as children head back to school, parents filing for vaccine exemptions have gone up to about 3% since the pandemic. That makes communities more susceptible to diseases like measles, one of the most contagious viruses.
We see pockets in communities where that vaccination level is lower. So we want to really think about the unique barriers that might be present in those communities.
We've seen a rise in measles as well as now pertussis or whooping cough cases. What is the CDC doing about that?
We have a Vaccines for Children's program here in the country that covers the cost of vaccines for folks who are either on Medicaid or lower income. We've been making sure we can break down barriers so that kids and families can get vaccinated.
Director Cohen says children got behind on vaccinations because of the pandemic and mistrust.
We had a lot of distrust of healthcare, a lot of distrust of vaccines in particular come out of the COVID pandemic. And that's been more isolated to the COVID vaccine. People still trust the vaccines they got when they were kids.
Meeting families like the Sorias in their community will help children like Emily get ready for school with lollipops, Band-Aids, and protection from preventable diseases. Dr. Celine Gounder, CBS News, Atlanta.
There's more action on the court today at the U.S. Open. Up next, details on Coco Gauff's shocking upset and an update on the men's competition. It's time for What to Watch. We begin with the U.S. Open and a disappointing finish for defending champ Coco Gauff at the U.S. Open. She is out in the fourth round after losing in 3 sets to fellow American Emma Navarro, who has now beaten her 2 majors in a row. Gauff and Navarro were actually roommates at the Paris Olympics. And there was some good news, though, for another American. Francis Tiafoe will advance to the quarterfinals. That match is set for tomorrow. And now to the Paralympic Games in Paris, where a young archer made an incredible debut. Sheetal Devi of Team India shot a perfect 10. Devi was born with a rare congenital disorder that causes underdeveloped limbs. She's the first female armless archer to ever compete in the Games and nearly set a world record before falling short in the pre-quarterfinal yesterday. But she still has a chance to win a medal in today's mixed event. And archer Matt Stutzman won the gold medal for Team USA and set a new Paralympic record. The athlete from Iowa said that after the win, he left the stage and said, quote, cried like crazy.